Outsmarting a Kidnapper. How movie tactics can save you. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. At 11:23 p.m., my world shrank to one choice. I was pushing a cart of cat litter and soup across a dim supermarket lot when a silver SUV rolled slow, as if its headlights were curious. I'm Casey, 32, an EMT who talks calmly while other people panic. I've coached strangers through worst nights with a steady voice. I just didn't expect to use it on myself. The passenger window slid down. A man with careful manners leaned into the light and said, "Lose your wallet?" I hadn't. My keys already sat in my palm, teeth biting my skin, my phone face down in the cart basket. Keep talking, keep noticing, keep a trail. So I answered with a bright, store-voiced, "No worries, security cameras catch everything out here." And I angled my body so the closest lens on the lamppost could see my face. "Be neighborly," he said. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The driver kept the SUV idling. I named other things instead, in my head. The flickering letter in the store sign, the red stripe on the cart return, the wet tire track beside my shoe. "My friend's inside," I said, waving at air. "She's on her way out." My phone buzzed. Group chat. "MAY, where are you, hero?" I thumbed a reply without looking down. Row B, cart corral, silver SUV. Then I spoke into nothing. "I'm waving, Maya." "Yep, row B." The driver's eyes flinched toward the storefront. The man with manners, Reed, though I didn't know his name yet, kept the charm set to warm. "We'll take you to the office to turn it in," he said, like a line he'd practiced. I stayed sunny but uncooperative. "All good. I'll walk with store staff." The cart's front wheel thunked the metal rack, loud and ordinary, a bell in the quiet lot. Reed's smile thinned. "You're overreacting." It sounded like a diagnosis. I took one more breath and filed the time. The SUV shifted inches closer, enough that the rubber kissed my knee through denim. I rolled the cart backward slowly, then angled toward the pool of light by the doors. The rear door cracked open as if by accident. The polite scene finally dropped its mask, and I felt the world tilt. I did the smallest thing I could that sent the biggest message. I set the cart brake with my heel, lifted my phone, and pretended to squint at the screen. Really, I was framing the lamppost camera and Reed's profile in the same shot, a nervous selfie that would timestamp his face with mine. He closed the gap with an indoor voice. "I'm just trying to help," he said. "I know help when I hear it." This wasn't. The cart sang as I rolled it more toward light, and I remembered the dumb teasing. Casey the cautious, Casey the checklist. I'm cautious because I've seen disasters as simple as a missed detail. Last week my carefulness got mocked at a birthday dinner, and I laughed along, cheeks hot. I told myself to be less tightly wound. Funny how quick we ditch good habits when people clap for bad ones. 5 years on an ambulance makes you a student of little tells. The patient who jokes too hard, the family member who answers questions for someone else. Reed answered for me. "We'll walk you in," he offered, like he owned the sidewalk. He glanced at the driver. The driver glanced at the empty entrance. I named 3 new ordinary things to myself. The ad for 2-for-1 oranges, the spill of salt near the ice bag freezer, tiny moths in the light cone. Keep noticing. Keep a trail. I'd lectured a teenager about staying on the phone with 911, about describing what they saw, not what they feared. Say what is, not what might be, I'd said, and the kid had breathed easier. So I spoke to the air again. "Maya, I'm by the cart return with the silver SUV, and the lamppost camera is pointed right at us." Stage directions change an audience, even an invisible one. He stepped just enough to keep his left cheek out of the lens. The driver turned the radio up, bass like a heartbeat you couldn't claim. I used to love movies where one impossible move fixed everything. Tonight felt quieter, 100 tiny choices that added up to a bearable story. Reed's hands were empty, which somehow made me more nervous. Empty hands can mean using the place itself. The rear door stayed ajar. My breath clouded. The automatic doors sighed open for no one. I said a single word that changed the temperature of his smile. "Police," I said, not as a threat, but as a weather report. Reed's smile pressed flatter, the driver's fingers tightened on the wheel, and the bass stopped. "We're just being friendly," Reed said. I nodded as if he'd given me a choice to accept or decline. "Then you'll understand if I go inside and ask the manager to walk me out." The two men didn't move, but the mood did. It slid from charming to clinical. The SUV's rear door clicked shut again. I backed my cart halfway to the light and stopped so the lamppost camera could see all three of us. My phone vibrated. Maya, I see you. 2 minutes out. Bring your cat litter thrown inside. I didn't laugh, but my lungs loosened. Here's what had led up to this. Afternoon text from a number I didn't have saved, calling me by a childhood nickname almost no one used. A car that matched lanes with mine for 3 exits on Tuesday. A fake, lost dog flyer on my windshield that somehow knew my route home. Little things that didn't shout. They accumulated like lint. Each time, I told myself I was overthinking. Each time, the feeling that I was being rehearsed for something returned. If life was a film, the first act had been all these tiny cues that the hero ignores. I wanted to be the person who paid attention. You don't want a scene, Reed said. He wasn't wrong. Scenes can go sideways. But scenes also mean witnesses. I lifted my phone again and called nobody. Detective Alvarez, it's Casey, I said into the air, calm as a nurse. I'm at the Easton Market lot, row B, near the cart return, silver SUV. Yes, I'm safe. Yes, the camera sees us. I wasn't giving instructions. I was giving facts to the universe and anyone within earshot of my voice. The driver cursed the way people do when their timeline gets tighter than they like. The SUV rolled back. Reed kept my gaze as if it were a rope. Next time, don't be so dramatic, he said, and the window whispered up. They idled to the end of the row, paused, then turned right at the edge of the camera's frame. I held my breath for 10 seconds, then 20. Maya jogged into the pool of light, blue beanie, eyebrows up like question marks. We're not going home, I said. Not yet. We pushed the cart inside, and the first small life raft of evidence floated toward us. The sliding doors breathed us into fluorescent safety, and my legs trembled. The night manager, a young guy with a mop under one arm, lifted his chin at our cart. You okay? He asked, eyeing the silver SUV through the glass. I kept my voice even. Could you radio the front desk that I'm asking for an escort to my car, and that the lot camera at row B was just active? He nodded, that small professional nod that means I've heard you, and I'm doing it. Breathe, Maya said. In for 4, out for 6. We counted while the cashier scanned. At customer service, laminated sign listed pickups. I took a photo because honest time is a friend. Someone left this at returns, the cashier said, sliding a trifold brochure toward us. The store's credit card application. A sticky note on it said, found near silver SUV. I didn't touch the paper. Can we bag that separately and write the exact time you found it? I asked. She obliged, sharp as scratching a little testimony on the plastic. Maya angled her phone toward the dark lot. They're still out there, she murmured, and snapped a single photo that caught a sliver of the plate. Not step by step, just noticing, collecting, marking. The manager returned with a security guard whose belt radio crackled. I'll walk you, the guard said, eyes neutral, professional. We can call non-emergency and have a unit cruise by. I nodded. Let's do that, I said. Could I leave a copy of this text thread with you? I showed him a screenshot naming row B, the SUV, the time. We stood under the doorway awning while the guard radioed, and that's when I saw the smallest, strangest detail. The lost dog flyer now tucked under a different windshield wiper inside. Same photo, same font, but the phone number had shifted by 1 digit since Tuesday. A control check. I photographed it from the doorway with the zoom. The SUV finally pulled away. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like a date pushed a few hours ahead. The guard walked us to Maya's car and watched us go. When my porch light clicked on, my hands began to shake the way perfectly people's hands shake once the doors lock and night exhales. My voicemail pinged with a new message from an unknown number I somehow already recognized. The unknown number was gentle and wrong, like a lullaby in a factory. Casey, the voice said, smooth as pressed linen. You've misunderstood a nice gesture. Let's calm this down. No need to involve anyone. He didn't say his name. He didn't need to. Reed had found the confident tone you use when you expect people to choose the easiest story. I saved the voicemail to 3 places: phone, cloud, email to myself with the time in the subject line. Not because I planned to do anything clever, but because proof leaks without containers. Maya sat cross-legged on my rug, as if anchoring the room. Call who you trust, she said. I scrolled to the line to a detective assigned to hospital coordination. Detective Alvarez answered with the voice of someone who'd just set down a coffee. I told him what I had. Times, camera, a plate partial, a flyer with a sneaky digit. He told me what I needed. My breathing to stay even, my notes to stay plain. Say only what you know, he said, and mark the time you knew it. He suggested I forward the voicemail, screenshots, and the flyer photo to a secure inbox. Don't chase anyone, he said. Let them chase your paper trail. I didn't sleep. I stacked small blocks of ordinary. I set out tomorrow's uniform, refilled the filter, watered the dying fern. Every few minutes, I checked the porch camera app like I could hypnotize calm into it. Around 3, Maya dozed on the couch, hoodie over her eyes. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from the grocery store app. A receipt resend time-stamped 11:37 p.m. with a map showing where items were scanned. It felt like a gift, a corporate memory that remembered us without asking. By morning, a non-emergency unit had driven by twice, slow and visible. Alvarez called to say the plate partial matched a rental. Documented, he said. That's good. My mind kept looping one scene. The way Reed had kept his left cheek out of the camera. Vanity isn't a crime, but vanity leaves patterns. I wrote that down. Then the doorbell rang, a small, ordinary sound that still felt like a dare. I checked the porch cam feed and saw a bouquet and a card with my name. The bouquet card used my childhood nickname in block letters, and my stomach went cold. The note said, "To calm a misunderstanding," and listed a cafe 2 blocks from the market with a time, 8 a.m. It was careful and plausible, like a jacket borrowed from a nicer friend. Maya leaned over my shoulder. "Don't go alone," she said, then caught herself. "Actually, don't go at all, not without telling Alvarez." I photographed the envelope without touching it, then used tongs from my kitchen drawer to lift the card into a clean zip bag. Ordinary objects became little boats carrying memory across rough water. We forwarded everything to the detective's inbox, and he replied faster than I expected. Received. Preserve originals. Do not engage directly. He didn't write fear into his text. He didn't have to. I slept an hour. When morning washed the porch in pale light, Maya drove us past the cafe so we could see, not test. The patio was half full, the kind of Tuesday traffic that keeps waiters relaxed. A silver SUV glided by once like a shark casing a pier. Reed sat inside at a two-top, angled so he could see the corner and the door. He looked ordinary. Blue shirt, coffee cup, the expression of someone who expects to be agreed with. I took the picture from inside the car and wrote the time on my palm. "We're not meeting him," I said. "We're meeting the truth." Detective Alvarez met us in the station's mediated interview room, walls the color of reasonable decisions. "Give me your timeline out loud," he said, voice calm enough to lower the pulse in my wrist. The thing about saying facts is that each sentence lifts a little weight off your chest. I spoke in boring sentences. The SUV, the card, the plate partial, the flyer with the drifting digit. Alvarez's pen tapped once when I mentioned the flyer. "I've seen similar," he said. "Sometimes it's used to test attention." He didn't say how. He didn't need to. He asked for my phone so an analyst could preserve the voicemail's metadata. At 7:59 a.m., my phone lit with a call from the cafe number. The bouquet card used my childhood nickname in his exact handwriting. We let the call roll to voicemail while Alvarez dialed the cafe's manager from a desk line. "You'll see a blue shirt patron on your left," he said, describing Reed in neutral phrases. "We'd like your security footage preserved." The manager's answers were tinny but cooperative. Alvarez thanked him, then turned to me. "You did fine," he said, as if grading a quiz I hadn't studied for. Maya's eyes flicked toward the window. "He's pacing," she murmured, looking at the cafe through her phone camera from 2 blocks away. "He's checking who's watching." We printed my grocery receipt with the store's map thumbnail and taped it to a whiteboard with the time, then added a still from the porch cam with the bouquet and envelope. Alvarez drew a simple line from 11:23 p.m. to 8 a.m., empty except for dots labeled with what we could prove. Not how, not guesses. Dots with small names. Call, camera, card. "Think of this as a spine," he said. "We attach ribs when we verify." He phoned a contact at the rental agency with the plate partial. The reply came back clean. "Contract last week. Card ending in 44. name redacted pending request. The cafe manager called back to say a customer had paid cash and left a business card with only a first name, Reed. We drove by the cafe once more after Reed had gone. The cashier remembered the bouquet. He asked if we had a fridge in back, she said, puzzled. Said he didn't want the flowers to wilt. Maya wrote her name and number on the back of our printed timeline, with the time of her statement. The cashier added a tiny detail. He kept his left side away from the camera. The same vanity as last night. The same choreography. It wasn't a trick to copy. It was a tell to recognize. Back at the station, Alvarez's analyst returned with the voicemail report. The call had originated from a VoIP service registered to a work hub across town. Reed liked borrowed rooms. He liked temporary identities. The detective's face didn't change, but his pen stopped tapping. He slid a second file toward me and pointed to one line I hadn't expected. A cashier remembered his left cheek, always turning away from cameras. The file showed a report from 18 months ago, a similar misunderstanding bouquet, a similar meeting request, a similar gentle voice that preferred people obedient and alone. That case had gone quiet when the complainant moved out of state and stopped cooperating. It wasn't proof, but it sang the same melody. My breath went shallow, then steadied when Maya reached across the table and squeezed my sleeve. Patterns are helpful, Alvarez said, like a teacher who refuses to dramatize the answer. We don't need to know why he does it to treat what he did as real. He listed simple next steps: preserve media, request footage, put notes in a form instead of a diary, ask the cafe to hold the guest receipt. He told me what he tells witnesses who worry about being dramatic. You're not making a movie, he said. You're making a record. I remembered Reed's voice insisting there was no need to involve anyone. Control is a lonely fuel. It burns bright and demands silence. My phone buzzed again. An email from a throwaway address with a subject line that pretended we were friends. Let's clear the air. The body embedded a blurry photo of me outside the market, with an arrow and the words "fake story" underlined twice. The timestamp was wrong by 6 minutes. Sloppy or arrogant, I couldn't tell. We printed it and added it to the spine. If he goes public, he goes public, Alvarez said. Truth like sunlight and timestamps. Maya cross-checked the VoIP service against a directory of co-working spaces. One was 2 blocks from the rental agency. He rents prop rooms, she muttered. He rents the feeling of legitimacy. She found a news item about a small-time fraud ring that had used the same co-working address last spring to send appointment reminders that steered people to empty lots. Not a how-to, just context that made my skin feel strangely hot and cold. The mini-twist wasn't a twist so much as a sheet pulled off furniture. Reed wasn't a random man good at small talk. He was practiced at borrowings, names, rooms, numbers, and practiced at asking people to handle their fear privately. The detective arranged to contact the earlier complainant through a liaison. We didn't need gossip. We needed a line on the page with a date that rhymed with mine. A quiet thought landed in my chest and stayed, heavier than I wanted. Reed wasn't random. He'd rehearsed this part on other people. The plan we built was boring by design. Alvarez scheduled a voluntary conversation for Reed in a controlled space with neutral oversight. If Reed declined, the record would say so. Maya and I built a binder we could carry without shaking. The porch cam still, the market receipt with the tiny map, the cafe's footage request acknowledgement, the email printout with the timestamp mismatch, the bouquet envelope in a clear pouch labeled with time found and who witnessed it. We printed a narrow timeline down the left side of each page so anyone could follow without flipping back, and we added a list of contact names in one column. Cashier, manager, guard. We weren't inventing anything. We were building a table other people could eat from. Alvarez suggested we loop in one more adult I trusted to stand in a room and keep the temperature low. I nominated my captain at the EMS base, who has a voice that can calm noisy waiting rooms. He won't argue facts, I said. He'll call time when people talk over each other. The detective nodded. Perfect. He called the meeting for Thursday afternoon in a municipal room with glass walls that faced the hallway traffic, a place where voices instinctively lower and chairs squeak a little if you shift too much. That afternoon, a message landed from the same throwaway email. I can help you if you let this go. It included a clip of me in the lot, looped and cropped to make my angle toward the camera look like a spin toward the SUV. Narrative is a tool. In rough hands, it becomes a leash. We added it to the binder and wrote underneath in plain ink. Clip is edited. Original footage shows wider frame. We did not get fancy. Fancy is for show. The truth is for keeping. I went home and watered the fern again, a ritual for living things under stress. At dusk, the silver SUV parked 2 houses down and idled for 30 seconds, then left. The porch cam recorded the passing shape, the timestamp steady as a lighthouse pulse. I didn't step outside. When the meeting invite went out with a formal subject line, Reed replied with exactly 4 words. We booked a room where truth leaves a paper trail. Happy to clarify, Reed wrote back, attaching a PDF that wasn't clarification so much as a performance. Character references from places I couldn't verify, printouts of my own social media, cropped to imply I overreact, and a 2-sentence statement that framed the bouquet as a neighborly apology. He copied a generic legal address at the bottom, as if to suggest authority stood behind him. Alvarez read it without changing expression. We'll put it in the stack, he said, and slid it into a sleeve marked Received AS claimed. Facts don't fear company. The morning of the meeting, a voicemail arrived from a new number. You don't want this to become embarrassing, Reed said, in that same linen voice. Accept an apology and move on. None of this looks good for you. Love bombing had shifted to reputational weather. Maya texted a single sentence. He's narrating, not negotiating. My captain called to say, I'll be there early and I'll bring coffee, which felt like the bravest sentence in the world. At noon, I stood outside the municipal room and watched people pass through the glass. A mom urging a toddler forward, a man carrying a stack of permit forms, a janitor pushing a cart with a slow squeak. Ordinary life is the best witness because it doesn't know it's watching. Reed arrived 6 minutes late, wearing a polite sweater and carrying nothing. He scanned the hallway through the glass, saw the detective, saw my captain, saw Maya's steady stare, and calibrated his smile. He sat where Alvarez indicated. My hands were steady when I opened the binder to the first timeline page. Reed spoke first. This is ridiculous, he said lightly. Alvarez nodded as if the word were a color on a swatch. We're going to proceed in a simple order, the detective said. Time, place, item, witness. We began with the market receipt and the lamppost camera. The cafe manager's written note came next. The bouquet envelope lay on the table in its clean pouch, silly and ominous at once. Casey, Reed said, softening his mouth. We could have handled this with a simple call. He promised mercy if I forgot the timeline already on file. Reed's words floated in the glass room like perfume left too long in the air. A simple call, he repeated, eyes trying to corner mine. My captain leaned forward just enough to say, Stay on order. Alvarez nodded and slid the next page into view. The VoIP record, documented as originating from the co-working hub. The analyst's statement sat below the log, short and bureaucratic. This shows intent to mask identity, Alvarez said. Not accident. Not misunderstanding. Reed's smile tightened, but he still tried charm. Anyone could rent that desk. It proves nothing. Maya spoke for the first time. Then why did the bouquet card use Casey's childhood nickname? Silence folded across the table. Reed looked at the glass wall, where passers-by moved with ordinary errands. He was being watched, but not by choice. Alvarez turned the page to the edited clip Reed had emailed. The detective held up the printed still from the market's unedited camera alongside it. 2 different frames, he said calmly. One cropped to mislead. Reed shifted in his chair. I wanted to make sure Casey knew how this looked, he said, tone suddenly brittle. Perception matters. My captain wrote something on a legal pad and pushed it across the table to me. In block letters, facts matter more. I breathed easier. We weren't here to shout. We were here to stack bricks. Reed dabbed his forehead with a napkin. This is petty, he said, though his voice carried less silk. Alvarez pointed to the line chart of times we had drawn down the spine of events. This is sequence, he said. It's not petty. The detective placed the bouquet envelope in its pouch at the center of the table. We'll end here, he said. The evidence stands where you put it. Reed glanced at each of us, eyes searching for cracks. None appeared. When we adjourned, Reed's last sentence wasn't a denial but a threat painted thin. He warned me I'd regret bringing witnesses into something best kept quiet. The warning clung to me on the drive home, like smoke even when the fire is gone. But Alvarez's face at the table stayed with me too, unchanging, practical, reminding me that truth thrives under fluorescent lights. Reed sent no follow-up messages that night. Instead, Maya forwarded a copy of the municipal room's sign-in sheet, which documented Reed's arrival and departure with times. "Every doubt matters," she texted. "This one shows he engaged on record." I placed it at the end of the binder and realized we had closed a loop. For once, it wasn't my word against his charm. It was my record against his pattern. 2 mornings later, Alvarez called with an update. "Reed's name is now part of an open review," he said. "We're connecting timelines with the earlier file. You don't have to carry this alone." I thanked him, words feeling small compared to the weight lifted. Later that week, a reporter emailed me, politely asking if I'd comment on a string of questionable approaches linked to Reed's alias. I declined, but seeing the question in black and white made the story feel less like mine alone and more like something sunlight was finally touching. At home, the fern unfurled a new leaf, stubborn and green. I watered it and thought of Reed's bouquet, already wilted and sealed in a plastic pouch. A counterfeit kindness compared to a real plant that keeps growing. When I told Maya, she laughed softly. "That's your metaphor, right there," she said. "Real things take tending. Fake things collapse when the act ends." She was right. Yet under the relief, I knew fallout had only begun, and it wouldn't stay private for long. The truth had left the room with him, and now it would echo wider. The fallout arrived in fragments, carried by other people's voices. A neighbor mentioned the SUV parked outside Reed's place now bore different plates. A friend at City Hall told Maya an unusual number of document requests had been filed about Reed's business license. My captain reported that 2 colleagues had asked whether I was involved in something. The circle widened without my consent, but this time the story carried proof rather than rumors. Alvarez reassured me. "Facts anchor. Let the whispers drift. We handle process." It sounded steady, and I clung to it. At a family dinner, my cousin leaned across the table and whispered, "Was that him on the news?" I nodded once. My aunt's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "You should have kept quiet," she murmured. But Aunt Ruth, seated beside me, shook her head firmly. "No, quiet is what men like that feed on." Her words landed like nails hammered into a doorframe, keeping something dangerous outside. Even Lena, my sister who once echoed Dad's lines about pride and peace, sent me a late text. "Maybe you did the right thing." Maybe. It wasn't absolution, but it was crack in her wall. Financially, there were no direct costs. Emotionally, the invoice came in late nights and the occasional spike of fear when a car idled too long nearby. I learned to check cameras calmly, not obsessively. Alvarez taught me to keep notes factual, never flavored by assumption. Maya kept every new item labeled and filed. Together, we built a fortress not of stone, but of sequence. And brick by brick, Reed's story stopped being his alone. Still, fallout meant stress, whispers, and the ache of knowing family ties don't mend cleanly. The fallout meant stress, whispers, and an ache that family ties can't mend easily. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was boring in the best sense. Therapy once a week, where I learned that breathing steady in a chair is as brave as any chase. Setting rules with Maya for when to talk about the case and when to watch a show instead. Alvarez encouraged me to join a support group for witnesses who had navigated intimidation tactics. I went once, hesitant, and stayed longer than I thought possible. Hearing strangers describe similar calls and cards felt like being led into a room I didn't know I needed. I took a skills course on digital hygiene, how to set alerts for account changes, how to request data exports from providers, how to freeze a credit line until I wanted it thawed. Ordinary tools, not movie stunts, but they steadied me. I put a written boundary in place with anyone who asked too many questions. The case is documented and under review. I won't discuss details. It felt adult, and it worked. Even my aunt who once urged silence nodded and changed the subject when I repeated it. One night, the fern's pot cracked from growth. I transplanted it into a larger container, soil spilling on the counter, roots messy and alive. Watching it stretch upward made me think about what boundaries really are, not walls, but containers that give shape. I wrote that down in the notebook I used to track facts and feelings side by side. Maya smiled when I showed her. "You're making your own metaphors now," she said. Healing meant giving shape to fear until it couldn't overflow the edges anymore. Healing meant learning boundaries aren't walls, but containers that keep fear from overflowing. Reflection comes easier in the morning, when the sun hits the glass room at the station and I'm just another citizen walking past. I think about that night at 11:23 p.m. when my world shrank to a choice. I remember the bouquet card with my nickname scrawled like bait. I remember Reed's voice promising a simple call could erase the record. And I remember the binder on the table, each page a line and a spine no one could snap in half. What I learned is simple. Courage isn't improvising stunts. It's documenting calmly until the truth holds itself upright. It's asking for help before you think you deserve it. It's letting allies put their weight on the other side of the scale so the fulcrum doesn't break. Alvarez said once, "You're not making a movie. You're making a record." I believe him now. A record is how sunlight travels forward. If anyone watching this feels a whisper of fear when the phone rings, I hope you remember my fern. Real things keep growing when you tend them. Fake bouquets wilt. Keep receipts. Keep timelines. Keep allies who write facts matter more on a pad when your hands shake. That's the real movie tactic worth keeping. And one hopeful image, a plant on a windowsill, alive because you gave it room. And one practical takeaway, always note the time, preserve the message, and share with allies.